We all love giant robots, don't we? They've been a part of our lives right from our childhood, and have spawned across various forms of media, even in anime, with the likes of Gundam and Neon Genesis Evangelion being popular examples. However, there is one particular franchise that always hits our brains whenever somebody mentions giant robots. Yes, that's right, we're talking about the Transformers. These bad boys have been ruling over the minds of teenage boys and young men ever since the cartoons came out, and with various live-action adaptations and other media spin-offs, it's fair to say that they are indeed the most popular giant robots from a global perspective. Now, the Transformers may have the power of legacy behind them, but it's important to note that there has been a more recent franchise that has maintained a cult fandom ever since its release. Yup, we're talking about Pacific Rim, and more particularly, the extremely massive Jaegers that were used to take down all kinds of kaijus. So, here we have two contrasting mechanical robot fighter types, and they both belong with the good guys, so there's technically no reason for them to fight each other at all, well, unless the Transformers in question are the Decepticons. However, we live in a world where the multiverse is a popular concept, so we can at least imagine what it would be like to pit these two forces against each other. Now, let's begin by comparing various aspects between these two juggernauts. Please note that for the purpose of analysis, I'm not restricting my research to the live-action version of the Transformers and am also including those featured in the animated series as a reference point. Okay then, so the first thing to consider would be size, which in this case, does matter to a certain extent. Before we begin, let me just provide some context for viewers who may not be too familiar with the Transformers franchise. Basically, the Transformers are an alien species of giant robots who come from the planet Cybertron. They are split up into two factions, with the Autobots coming to Earth to save themselves and protect the planet from the Decepticons. Since the Earth is rife with a natural resource which the Autobots need to survive, the war between them and the Decepticons revolved around keeping the humans safe and ensuring their enemies didn't get their hands on the energon they need. The Autobots are peaceful warriors brought into a war for survival rather than for conquest, led by the one and only Optimus Prime. Each faction member has a specific role, whether that be weapons, scouting, medical, or sniping. They're also all experts in their field and can be a coordinated force to be reckoned with. Coupled with their ability to transform into any vehicle, they can even hide in plain sight. Essentially, the Autobots work perfectly in tandem with each other, and are able to carry out any kind of premeditated strike if the need arises. They are highly intelligent robots, particularly skilled in the art of battle, which gives them a fair advantage due to them being sentient beings of their own. Now, while the Autobots may have the chops to be a dangerous and effective army, facing down a team of Jaegers would most definitely be their most hazardous task yet. Look, the Autobots are no strangers to fighting massive enemies like Unicron, Trypticon, and even Demolisher, but Jaegers are a towering presence, standing at almost 300 feet tall, whereas most Autobots barely make it over 100 feet. Optimus Prime himself has only made it to 38 feet tall, and that too in the IDW comics. Because of this, the Autobots are much weaker than the Jaegers and much easier to hit with a well-timed blast from a cannon or swipe from a blade. The only way they'd have a chance to win is through a highly coordinated effort relying on the Jaegers' weaknesses. The story is pretty much the same if we consider the Decepticons as well. They are roughly the same height as the Autobots, with their leader Megatron reaching a height of 35 feet in the live-action movies. As per all the Transformers lore we've known and heard, the Decepticons may be more threatening than the Autobots, but they somehow always manage to get their butts handed to them, so it's unlikely that they will pose a larger threat to the Jaegers unless you group in some of the larger ones together. Yes, there are beings like Unicron that have been known to exceed 200 feet in height, which puts them at a much better chance of fighting the Jaegers as per their size. Having said that, let's not forget that size is not the only thing that is considered in a fight. Now, let's learn a bit about the Jaegers, shall we? They are massive robots that have been created to stop kaiju that emerge from a dimensional gateway in the Pacific Ocean. These robots are all a part of the Jaeger program, which is a collection of giant mechs created by different countries worldwide. To operate them, two pilots have to be cerebrally compatible, so they can carry the mental stress of controlling the massive robots. When they're drift compatible, their movements become one, and the Jaeger becomes a deadly machine capable of defeating any kaiju it crosses, as could be seen in the movies. The Jaegers can carry massive weapons that include swords and rockets, while also bolstering energy cannons if it so happens that they find themselves in a long-range battle. The Jaegers are designed to counter any Kaiju threat, and their size makes them a true titanic force. As a matter of fact, there is an ongoing debate as to whether the Jaegers can take down the king of the monsters, that is Godzilla himself. However, we'll save that topic for another time. Now, while the Jaegers may have the size and firepower on their side, speed is not really their ally. Due to the Earth's gravitational pull, these machines are far from graceful, which is quite evident when you see them in action. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why the first Pacific Rim movie worked was because people liked how realistic the robots felt due to their slow movements. Of course, some of the Jaegers do have the capabilities of being agile, such as Crimson Typhoon, who did show some neat tricks in its battle against Odachi, but even then, they are nowhere near the speed and power of an Autobot on a mission. As a result, they leave themselves open to attacks because their reaction times are significantly slower than a techno-organic organism like the Autobots, or even the Decepticons for that matter. I mean, just take a look at Cherno Alpha for example. That Jaeger might be a brute force when it comes to strength, but there is no way it will be able to dodge attacks that will be launched at it by a team of Autobots. Hell, even if Cherno Alpha tries to land a punch, it'll be fairly easy for an Optimus Prime or a Starscream to dodge it. So, how can I say with so much confidence that a Jaeger will most likely be torn to shreds if it were to come up against an Autobot? We all know about size, but let's also take a look at power sources, shall we? A Jaeger would be lucky to have a nuclear fission core, but a majority of them rely on things like internal combustion. Transformers, however, utilize the fictional metamaterial energon as fuel. This is essentially their life, and far as I remember, energon is treated as a superior source to all the known forms on Earth. So yeah, if we were to simply compare the power sources, the Transformers, especially the Autobots, get a point. Another important factor to note is the choice of weaponry. Now, I will admit that I'm not completely sure of the extremes when it comes to what a Jaeger can carry, and they already have an impressive artillery, such as the famed plasma cannon. However, as far as what we've seen in the comics, animated series, and live-action versions, a Transformer can easily mount more than just a few enhanced melee weapons. And this is not some extra assault rifles or hand grenades we're talking about here. I mean terrain-altering level firepower that can take down robots far larger than the Jaegers. So here's yet another aspect wherein we can state that size doesn't come to the rescue. Oh yeah, and how can I forget about one of the two most important aspects of a fighter defense? As space-capable machines, Transformers have to be hardened to their very core at minimum. Let alone micrometer impacts not punching holes into them, their electronics are not affected by cosmic radiation that could, or rather should EMP a whole Jaeger. What's my proof for this? Well, we've also seen in the Pacific Rim movies that a Jaeger can't tank a nuclear blast, and only gets destroyed without much delay. However, the Transformers can take a whole lot more than that, and this is despite their puny sizes. At the end of the day, it all boils down to the fact that one side has alien DNA and has come to our planet after surviving a literal doomsday, while the other side is basically the product of human intelligence. There's only so far we can go as a race, and the vulnerabilities of the Jaegers put that into perspective. Now, let me paint you an example by using the two best candidates from both sides. We have Optimus Prime from the Autobots and Gypsy Danger from Pacific Rim. Normally, this fight would be over in a second if Optimus just used an EMP blast to render Gypsy Danger useless. However, this Jaeger is the only remaining analog version, so it would be immune to such a strike. This theory was proven when Gypsy Danger came out to fight against Odachi and Leatherback, who had specifically used his blast to neutralize all his enemies. However, even if this were the case against Optimus, it doesn't mean that he's just going to stand there and let another giant robot do all the talking. Gypsy Danger clocks in at around 260 feet high, so it's effectively almost 10 times larger than Optimus Prime. This would actually give the leader of the Autobots the upper hand because he is known to be fast and sharp. So, the main thing that Optimus needs to do is dodge all of Gypsy Danger's attacks, which should not be a problem for him at all. Once he bamboozles his opponent, he can choose a weak spot like the nape or the head of the target. So, what can we say in conclusion? There's no denying the size, strength, and brutality of a Jaeger, but when you compare them to a well-coordinated team of Autobots, they are hardly a threat primarily because of the strategies that will be in play. Optimus Prime is a battle genius who is capable of defeating anyone who dares to pose a challenge to him. After all, the Autobots are known for defeating the likes of Unicron, the Constructicons and more, so they will most definitely have an understanding of what it takes to dismantle a massive mecha from the inside. Just think about all the possible target points for the Jaegers. Their joints are always at risk, so if you get characters like the Dinobots, then it won't be long before you see guys like Grimlock ripping them to shreds. Plus, there are also mechanics like Wheeljack who almost always have some form of EMP weapon that can short-circuit any system. We all saw what happened when Leatherback did his thing against Cherno Alpha and Striker Eureka, didn't we? And yes, another issue is the pilots within the Jaegers themselves. Because they are required in the first place, their reaction time is significantly slower than that of an Autobot. Plus, with deadly snipers like RC, all it takes is a well-placed shot in the cockpit to bring them down without having to worry about size. Despite being a horrible film, Pacific Rim Uprising also showed us the difficulty of trying to fight off smaller kaiju, and the Autobots would be no different. While some may get taken out in the crossfire from weapons and slow vehicle modes, the Autobots that survive the onslaught will fight hard and take no prisoners as they systematically destroy each Jaeger they face. So there you have it, the Transformers vs the Jaegers would definitely be a close and drawn-out battle, but at the end of the day, it will be skill and not strength that will prevail. Like, share, and subscribe if you like this content, and let me know if you want me to cover any other standoffs.